the alien princess fell for a human, and the court turned hostile. From her earliest memory, she would climb the wide spiral balcony of the palace every night, staring at the flickering lights of distant worlds. The Zyran Empire, with its towering crystal spires and flowing energy gardens, was magnificent, but Sarilith often felt trapped beneath the weight of expectation. She was the only child of the royal line, destined to rule a civilization that prized tradition above all else. While other nobles reveled in the pomp and ceremony of court life, she longed for something different, something beyond the palace walls. The orbital city of Luminara, floating above Zyran Prime, was alive with color and sound, a hub of trade and culture for thousands of species across the galaxy. Ships with metallic wings glimmered in the sky, weaving patterns of light as they moved between docking stations. Sarilith had grown up surrounded by the court's careful instructions, but today she felt a spark of daring. There was a new delegation from a distant planet called Earth, humans, and their ambassador was said to be arriving soon. The humans were unknown to the Zyran court, a mystery wrapped in stories and warnings. Most advisors whispered that humans were unpredictable and far beneath Zyran intelligence. Sarilith, however, was fascinated. She wanted to see them for herself. She slipped from her chambers, moving quietly along the palace corridors. The sound of her footsteps echoed against polished crystal walls, and the faint hum of energy conduits thrummed in the background. Her attendants had been dismissed for the morning, giving her the freedom to wander unnoticed. Today, she planned to explore the energy garden, a place where plants glowed softly in response to thought, and where the air shimmered with flowing streams of captured starlight. When she arrived, the garden was more beautiful than she remembered. Luminous vines twisted around crystalline pillars, and pools of light reflected the colors of the sky. Sarilith stepped carefully along the floating pathways, her gaze drawn to the delicate balance of nature and technology that the Zyrans had perfected over centuries. She inhaled deeply, savoring the fragrance of alien blossoms that pulsed gently as if breathing with the rhythm of the city. It was there, among the glowing plants and whispering energy streams, that she first saw him. Ethan, the human ambassador, knelt beside a panel of Zyran machinery, his hands moving with careful precision as he examined the device. Unlike the polished nobles of her court, he wore a simple uniform, practical and unadorned, with a tool belt slung across his waist. His hair fell into his eyes, and he did not notice Sarilith at first, completely absorbed in his work. Curiosity nudged her forward. She watched as Ethan adjusted a delicate component, his expression a mixture of concentration and awe. She could see the way his mind worked, different from the Zyrans she knew. Humans were said to be impulsive and clumsy, but here was a human handling technology that even experienced Zyran engineers found challenging. A sudden spark leapt from the panel and Ethan froze, startled. Before he could react, Sarilith stepped forward. With a swift motion, she redirected the flow of energy with her own hands, stabilizing the device. The glow returned to normal, and the air of tension dissolved. Ethan looked up, startled to see a young woman standing so close, her eyes wide and curious. "Thank you," he said, his voice tinged with relief. I didn't expect that." Sarilith smiled, brushing a strand of glowing hair from her face. "Most don't." "Are you always this clumsy or just today?" she asked teasingly. Ethan chuckled, a sound so human and unfamiliar that it made her chest lift with delight. "I assure you I'm not usually this dramatic. This panel is temperamental," he admitted, gesturing to the device. "I think it responds better to gentle touch than brute force, which is not something I have much experience with." "You handled it well," Sarilith said softly. "Better than many Zyrans I've seen. You have a different kind of talent." Ethan blinked, unsure how to respond. Compliments from a princess were rare, and from this princess, even rarer. He studied her face, noticing the intensity in her eyes, the curiosity that seemed to shine brighter than the starlight above. There was something about her that made him want to know more, to understand this world and the beings who lived in it. "I'm Ethan," he said, holding out a hand. "From Earth." "Sarilith," she replied, taking his hand with a firm but gentle grip. The warmth of contact was unusual, a sensation she had not expected. "Princess of Xiren, welcome to Luminara." For a long moment they simply looked at each other, two beings from different worlds, sharing a silent understanding. The air seemed to hum between them, not with energy alone, but with the unspoken acknowledgement of potential friendship, or perhaps something more. "You're not like the others," Sarilith finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't act afraid or impressed. You just exist." Ethan laughed softly, brushing a hand through his hair. "I suppose that's one way to survive in a place like this. Fear and politeness only get you so far. Curiosity keeps you alive, and occasionally makes friends with princesses." Sarilith laughed too, a sound like music in the glowing garden. She had never met anyone like him, someone who did not bend under the weight of expectation or bow to tradition automatically. In Ethan, she saw freedom, ingenuity, and a spark that reminded her of the endless possibilities beyond her palace walls. Over the next few hours, they explored the garden together. Sarilith showed him plants that responded to thought, bridges of light that connected floating platforms, and fountains that flowed with liquid starlight. Ethan, in turn, shared stories of his home planet, vast oceans, mountains that touched the clouds, and skies filled with a different kind of stars. He marveled at the differences, but also drew comparisons, finding similarities that Sarilith had never considered. As the sun of Luminara's orbit dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the city, Sarilith realized that time had slipped by unnoticed. The sky above glimmered with stars, each one reflecting in the pools of light below. She felt a strange sensation, a flutter in her chest she could not name. Humans had emotions she did not fully understand, but she recognized the warmth and joy she felt in Ethan's presence. "Will you stay long on Xiren?" she asked, breaking the comfortable silence. "For a while," Ethan replied. "I've been sent to learn from your people, help with communications, and observe how your civilization functions. But I hope to learn more than that. I hope to understand why this place feels alive in ways I can't explain yet." Sarilith nodded, understanding perfectly. There is more to Luminara than its walls and gardens. There is spirit. It is not just the city, it is the people who live here and the curiosity that drives them. Ethan smiled. "Then I'm glad I met you. Curiosity seems to be something we have in common." As night fell, the energy garden glowed brighter, the light reflecting in their eyes. They parted reluctantly, each carrying the memory of the other, aware that their meeting had changed something fundamental in both of them. Sarilith returned to her chambers, her mind racing with thoughts of possibilities, of friendship, of worlds beyond her own. Ethan returned to his quarters, equally stirred by the encounter, fascinated by the intelligence, grace, and warmth of the princess. Neither could have known that their innocent meeting would not go unnoticed. Within the palace, whispers had already begun. Advisors had observed the princess spending unusual time with the human ambassador. Courtiers exchanged cautious glances, some amused, some worried. In the conservative Xiren court, curiosity about humans was often frowned upon, and fraternizing with one, even a gifted human, was considered risky. For now, however, Sarilith and Ethan were unaware of the storm brewing beyond their shared world of light and wonder. All they knew was the simple truth of their connection, a spark of friendship, and perhaps something more, that neither tradition nor prejudice could easily extinguish. As she lay in her bed later that night, Sarilith looked out at the stars once again. They seemed closer now, as if they had moved just for her, inviting her to explore, to dream, to reach beyond the limits of her palace and her people. Somewhere far across the galaxy, A human thought of her as well, and in that thought was hope, curiosity, and a desire to discover together. And so their story began, not with fanfare, not with conflict, but with a meeting of minds, a meeting of hearts, and the quiet understanding that the universe held more than anyone had yet imagined. The days following their first meeting, Princess Sarilith and Ethan continued to spend time together, exploring the wonders of Luminara. The energy garden became their favorite place, a quiet refuge from the rigid routines of the palace. Sarilith loved showing him the hidden corners that even most Xyrans rarely visited. Crystal bridges that sang when stepped on, pools of water that reflected possible futures, and floating flowers that changed color when touched. Ethan, in turn, explained the simple joys of his home world, how rain felt on bare skin, the warmth of the sun, and the strange but comforting sounds of Earth's forests at night. Their friendship deepened naturally. There was no rush, no expectation, just a shared curiosity. Sarilith had never met anyone like Ethan. Humans, she had been told, were simple, fragile creatures. Yet here was one whose mind worked in ways that were both creative and practical, a mixture of logic and intuition that made even the most advanced Xyran technology feel familiar. And Ethan had never met anyone like Sarilith either. She was intelligent, fearless in her curiosity, and surprisingly warm. She asked questions not to show knowledge but to understand the world, and Ethan found that refreshing. But not everyone in the palace looked upon their growing connection with approval. Xyran court life was steeped in tradition, and the nobles whispered behind closed doors. "The princess is spending far too much time with that human," one advisor said, his voice low but sharp. "Humans are unpredictable. She is undermining her own position by encouraging him." Another noble scoffed. "He may seem clever, but humans lack the discipline and patience of Xyrans. The princess risks our people's trust by entertaining his ideas." The whispers spread quietly, like a shadow creeping over the halls. Sarilith, absorbed in her interactions with Ethan, noticed little at first. It was only when her attendants began returning with carefully worded messages, or when scheduled meetings with advisors were subtly moved or canceled, that she realized the court was watching her. Yet, instead of feeling fear or guilt, she felt a quiet determination. If her people could not see the value in curiosity and understanding, she would have to demonstrate it herself. One morning, she invited Ethan to join her in the palace library, a vast hall of floating archives that contained knowledge from thousands of worlds. The library's design was simple yet breathtaking. Shelves rose in spirals toward the ceiling, and the books hovered, waiting to be summoned with a thought. Sarilith glided between them, her fingers brushing the air, calling the volumes they might need. Ethan followed, eyes wide with wonder. "Most humans would never see this in their lifetimes," Sarilith said, smiling. "Even we Xyrans rarely access the entire collection. It is vast, and there is much to learn." Ethan bent to examine a floating scroll. "I don't know what most of this means," he admitted, "but I can feel the ideas behind it. The way knowledge is stored here, it's like the universe itself is whispering." Sarilith laughed softly. "You have a way of seeing things that others overlook. It is refreshing." Together, they explored theories of interstellar travel, energy manipulation, and the natural sciences of the galaxy. Sarilith enjoyed challenging Ethan, posing questions that tested his understanding and encouraged him to think beyond human conventions. Ethan, in return, offered perspectives the princess had never considered: creative problem-solving, unusual analogies from Earth, and questions that probed the very nature of Xyran logic. But as they spent more time together, the court's unease grew. Nobles began leaving cryptic notes for Sarilith, suggesting caution or reminding her of duty. Courtiers whispered to each other when she passed, their voices low but sharp. Some attempted to interfere subtly, moving objects in her path, or offering conflicting instructions that might confuse her. Others tried to discredit Ethan, pointing out his mistakes or questioning his knowledge, though he was careful and diligent in response. One afternoon, Sarilith discovered a message that had been redirected. It was from an elder advisor, warning her that the human's presence was causing unrest among the ruling council. The note suggested that she distance herself from Ethan if she wished to avoid scandal. Sarilith read it quietly, her mind calm but firm. She folded the paper, setting it aside. Ethan noticed her silence. "What is it?" he asked gently. Sarilith shook her head. "Some in the court are uncomfortable with our friendship," she said. "They think you might influence me in ways they do not approve of." Ethan frowned, unsure how to respond. "I don't want to cause trouble, I enjoy learning from you. I enjoy being with you." "Then that is enough," Sarilith replied with a small, confident smile. "I will not let fear or tradition dictate whom I spend time with or what I learn. If the court cannot understand that, then it is their limitation, not mine." Ethan looked at her with admiration. There was a strength in her resolve that he had not expected from royalty. Many leaders he had met relied on power and fear, but Sarilith relied on curiosity and intellect. It made him want to work even harder to match her ingenuity and insight. Over the following days, their partnership became more deliberate. Sarilith invited Ethan to the palace's innovation chamber, a space where Zyran inventors experimented with energy flow, communication devices, and advanced navigation systems. She wanted him to see the practical side of their civilization, and she wanted to learn from him as well. Ethan approached the work with careful attention. Unlike some inventors, he did not rush or assume he knew the answer. He observed, asked questions, and gently suggested modifications that Sarilith had not considered. They worked together to improve a navigation relay, combining Zyran technology with human concepts of redundancy and adaptability. The device, once unstable, began to function smoothly, sending signals across interstellar space with remarkable precision. As they tested the relay, a subtle energy pulse passed through the chamber. Sarilith looked at Ethan, impressed. "You think differently," she said. "You see patterns where we see only instructions." Ethan shrugged modestly. "I guess humans have to adapt constantly. We can't rely on centuries of tradition to guide us. We have to invent our own solutions." Their collaboration soon became a source of fascination for younger members of the court, some of whom were curious and open-minded. They watched from a distance, learning from the exchange and wondering if perhaps humans were not as limited as the elders claimed. Despite this, tension in the court continued to rise. Some advisors openly questioned Sarilith's judgment, warning that the princess's fascination with a human could weaken her credibility. Others whispered that she might be swayed by feelings, a dangerous proposition for someone in her position. Sarilith, however, remained undeterred. She knew that intelligence and empathy were strengths, not weaknesses, and she saw these qualities in Ethan. One evening, Sarilith invited Ethan to the palace observatory, a vast dome of transparent crystal that offered a panoramic view of the galaxy. Stars stretched endlessly in every direction, their light reflecting in the domed ceiling and the polished floors. The human gazed upward, his mouth slightly open in awe. "I never thought I would see anything like this," he said. "On Earth, the sky is beautiful, but it cannot compare to this." Sarilith smiled. "The galaxy is larger than most can imagine. Yet even in this vastness, connections can be made if one is willing to reach." Ethan turned to her, feeling a quiet warmth in his chest. "I am glad I met you, Sarilith. You make the universe feel smaller in a good way, like it's possible to understand it bit by bit." "And you make it feel larger," Sarilith replied. "You remind me that there are ideas and ways of thinking that we do not yet know, even as we master our own world." They stood together in silence for a long while, watching as a comet traced a glowing path across the galaxy. Neither spoke of the court, the whispers, or the challenges ahead. For now, they were simply two beings from different worlds, sharing knowledge, wonder, and a growing bond of trust. Yet the palace was not silent. Behind the walls, the council continued to observe, planning subtle interventions. Some courtiers attempted to discredit Ethan's work, while others tried to influence Sarilith's attention with urgent matters or lavish distractions. But with each challenge, Sarilith grew more confident. She had learned to trust her judgment, and she valued the human who had shown her that curiosity and understanding were powerful tools. The days turned into weeks, and the friendship between Sarilith and Ethan became an unspoken symbol of change. Their collaboration produced results that even skeptics could not ignore. A failing energy network was repaired with efficiency, communications between distant outposts improved, and innovative designs for environmental management were proposed. Their success demonstrated that cooperation between different species could yield remarkable results. Despite these achievements, Sarilith was aware of the growing hostility. Some whispers had turned into pointed questions in council meetings, and subtle obstacles appeared in her daily routines. But she faced these challenges with patience and intelligence, guided by her understanding of human creativity and her own Zyran wisdom. Late one night, as they worked together on a complex energy alignment, Ethan looked at Sarilith, his expression thoughtful. "Do you ever worry what the court will think about us?" Sarilith paused, considering the question. "I do not fear their judgment. I fear only stagnation, accepting limits because others insist upon them. If our friendship, our collaboration, is seen as strange or threatening, that is their problem, not ours." Ethan nodded, a quiet respect in his eyes. He had never met anyone so brave, so committed to truth and curiosity. It inspired him to push himself further, to contribute not for recognition but for discovery. As the night deepened, Luminara glowed with gentle light, the city alive yet peaceful. The stars above seemed to echo the quiet strength of their connection, a reminder that even in a world filled with caution and tradition, curiosity and courage could thrive. And so, the bond between the princess and the human ambassador grew stronger, shaped by trust, learning, and shared wonder. The court's hostility lingered, a shadow on the horizon, but Sarilith and Ethan faced it not with fear, but with intelligence, creativity, and the quiet confidence that understanding and friendship could overcome even the most ingrained prejudices. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, full of unknown worlds, uncharted ideas, and endless possibilities. And together, they were ready to explore them. The court's whispers had grown louder, but Princess Sarilith refused to let them control her actions. She had learned that fear and secrecy were tools of stagnation, and she wanted nothing to do with them. Every morning, she rose with purpose, meeting Ethan in the Palace Innovation Chamber or the Energy Garden. Together, they explored new ideas, solved old problems, and shared quiet moments that made their bond stronger. But the council was not idle. They began to devise trials, not of punishment, but of influence. Each test was designed to make Sarilith doubt herself, to challenge her judgment, and to demonstrate, at least to the skeptics, that a princess who befriended a human was unreliable. The first trial arrived one crisp morning, delivered by a senior advisor with a polite but firm expression. "Your Highness," the advisor said, bowing slightly, "the Northern Energy Relay has been unstable for weeks. The Council requests your guidance to stabilize it." "We expect a solution that respects Zyran protocol." Sarilith nodded, glancing at Ethan. "Shall we see what we can do?" Ethan smiled. "Of course, let's start." They made their way to the northern sector, a vast network of towers and floating platforms that stretched over shimmering waters. The energy relay was designed to channel power from the central sun catcher to the farthest reaches of Luminara. It was a delicate balance, and any miscalculation could disrupt the entire system. The relay tower hummed with energy, its streams of light flickering and unstable. Sarilith studied the device carefully, noting the patterns of fluctuation. Ethan examined the relay from a human perspective, considering the system's inefficiencies and ways to reduce unnecessary strain. Most Xyrans would attempt to force the energy to stabilize, Ethan said thoughtfully. But sometimes forcing a system only makes it worse. What if we work with its natural flow instead? Sarilith's eyes lit up. Interesting. Let's try a gentle alignment guided by the system's own rhythm. Working together, they adjusted the relay carefully. Sarilith's hands traced patterns in the air, guiding energy streams, while Ethan recalibrated mechanical components and reinforced weak points. The process was slow but deliberate. As they worked, a glow of understanding passed between them. Each appreciated the other's strengths, combining Xyran precision with human intuition. Finally, with a soft pulse, the relay stabilized. Streams of energy flowed smoothly, bathing the northern sector in radiant light. Sarilith stepped back, smiling. Ethan looked equally pleased, his chest swelling with quiet pride. "It works," he said, "and it works beautifully." Sarilith nodded. "We have done this together, that is the true achievement." When they returned to the court, some advisors were impressed, though most hid their admiration behind careful expressions. The trial had been designed to challenge her, but Sarilith and Ethan had succeeded without even realizing they were being tested. The next trial came in a different form. A neighboring system requested trade negotiations, but the ambassador's communications were fraught with misinterpretation. The council insisted that Sarilith manage the discussions. It was a test not of strength or intelligence, but of diplomacy, patience, and innovation. Sarilith invited Ethan to assist her, valuing his fresh perspective. He suggested translating Xyran formalities into concepts understandable by the other species, emphasizing simplicity and clarity. Sarilith, with her royal grace and keen insight, combined his methods with her own understanding of interstellar etiquette. The negotiations began tense, but slowly the atmosphere shifted. The other ambassadors recognized Sarilith's intelligence and Ethan's thoughtful input. By the end of the talks, agreements were reached that satisfied both sides. The Xyran Council could not deny the success, and even the most skeptical nobles had to acknowledge that the princess's methods, aided by the human ambassador, were effective. Yet, despite the victories, the court's hostility did not vanish. Some members sought subtler means of obstruction. They would delay resources, provide incomplete information, or manipulate schedules to make Sarilith's responsibilities more complex. She began to notice these patterns, but instead of frustration, she felt determination. One afternoon, while reviewing communications in the palace library, she found a project deliberately left incomplete by a court technician. Ethan noticed her frown. "Someone is trying to slow us down," he said quietly. Sarilith nodded. "Yes. But their efforts only make me more vigilant. I will not be hindered by fear or prejudice." Together, they devised a plan to complete the project, anticipating the missing elements and adapting creatively. Their work not only succeeded, but also introduced improvements the council had not expected. The solution was elegant, efficient, and sustainable, a demonstration that challenges could be overcome when intellect and collaboration combined. The palace's younger courtiers, who had previously watched from a distance, began to show subtle support. Some offered advice, others provided small assistance without seeking recognition. They were inspired by the partnership between Sarilith and Ethan, realizing that progress did not depend on rank or species, but on curiosity, courage, and collaboration. One evening, after completing a particularly intricate energy alignment, Sarilith and Ethan walked through the floating gardens. The light from the bioluminescent plants reflected in their eyes, creating a serene atmosphere. "Do you ever worry?" Ethan asked, breaking the quiet. "Worry," Sarilith replied, "that the council will turn more hostile or that the trials will become too much." Sarilith considered the question. Worrying is natural, but it is useless if it prevents action. I do not fear the Council's opposition. I respect it, but I will not let it control me. We are capable and we are learning together. That is what matters, Ethan smiled. You make courage look simple. Sarilith laughed softly. It is not simple, but it is necessary. And I am grateful to have someone who shares the journey with me. Their bond grew not only through shared success, but also through quiet moments like this. They exchanged ideas, stories, and dreams, learning from one another and building a mutual respect that transcended the differences between their worlds. The next trial was perhaps the most complex yet. A massive environmental issue had arisen in Luminara's outer sectors. The floating gardens were experiencing instability, energy streams fluctuating in ways that threatened the delicate balance of the city. The council requested Sarilith's intervention, implicitly expecting her to fail or require external guidance. Sarilith immediately called Ethan to assist. They examined the problem carefully, noting that the instability was not due to faulty equipment, but to the natural flow of energy in the city. The system was alive, responding to countless variables in ways that required careful observation and adaptability. This is not a problem of failure, Sarilith said thoughtfully. It is a problem of understanding the flow. Ethan nodded. Then we must work with it, not against it. Let's see what patterns exist and adjust accordingly. For hours, they studied the energy streams, mapping fluctuations and testing gentle adjustments. Sarilith's hands traced intricate patterns in the air, guiding the energy, while Ethan recalibrated mechanical and computational systems to harmonize with her movements. Their collaboration was seamless, a perfect blend of human intuition and Zyran precision. By nightfall, the gardens were stable. The energy flowed smoothly, the plants responded beautifully, and the floating platforms remained perfectly balanced. Sarilith and Ethan stepped back, exhausted but elated. Their success was a clear demonstration that cooperation between different species, guided by mutual respect and curiosity, could achieve extraordinary results. The council convened the following day. The trial's success was undeniable. Even the most skeptical advisors were forced to acknowledge the effectiveness of Sarilith and Ethan's methods. Some offered grudging praise, while others remained silent, unable to deny the results. Yet, despite these victories, Sarilith remained cautious. She understood that change was gradual, and not all hearts were easily swayed. The court's hostility would not disappear overnight, but she also recognized that every success, every demonstration of intelligence, creativity, and collaboration was a step forward. Late one night, as the palace lay quiet, Sarilith reflected on the trials and the growing bond between herself and Ethan. They had faced subtle hostility, complex challenges, and the expectations of a conservative court. Through it all, they had learned to trust one another, to combine their strengths, and to see the universe not as a series of obstacles, but as a place of endless possibilities. Ethan joined her on the balcony, where the stars stretched endlessly above. "Do you ever think about the future?" he asked softly. "All the time," Sarilith replied. "The future is not written by tradition alone. It is written by those who are willing to explore, to learn, and to act with courage." Ethan smiled. "Then I am glad we are writing it together." Sarilith nodded, feeling a quiet sense of hope. The court's hostility was still present, but it could no longer intimidate her. She had learned that intelligence, empathy, and collaboration were stronger than fear and prejudice. And with Ethan by her side, she was ready to face whatever challenges awaited, to continue discovering, learning, and shaping a future where differences were celebrated rather than feared. As they stood together watching the stars, they knew that their journey was only beginning. There would be more trials, more obstacles, and more challenges, but they also knew that their partnership, built on trust, respect, and curiosity, was unshakable. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and unknowns, but together they could face it all. And so, the princess and the human ambassador continued their journey, not as adversaries or strangers, but as collaborators, friends, and companions, proving that intelligence, courage, and understanding could bridge worlds, and that even the most rigid traditions could evolve. When hearts and minds dared to reach for the stars, the days had grown longer and busier, yet the bond between Princess Sarilith and Ethan remained unshaken. Their partnership had proven its worth through trials, challenges, and subtle hostility from the court. Every success strengthened their trust, but Sarilith knew the final test was not in machinery, energy, or negotiations. It was in the hearts and minds of her people. The court had watched them closely, and now it was time to face the ultimate challenge: public acceptance and proving that collaboration between species could benefit the entire Zyran Empire. The announcement came during the morning council meeting. A delegation from the neighboring system, Arves, had requested a public demonstration of Zyran technology adapted for interstellar communication. The council saw it as an opportunity and a subtle test. Sarilith was tasked with overseeing the demonstration. The skeptical advisors quietly hoped the princess would falter under the scrutiny of both her people and the aliens. Sarilith, however, had a different plan. She invited Ethan to join her in preparing for the demonstration. Together, they meticulously tested and refined the technology, combining Zyran precision with human creativity. Ethan suggested minor adjustments to the energy flow, and Sarilith incorporated them seamlessly. Their teamwork had become intuitive, a silent understanding guiding their every move. On the day of the demonstration, the palace hall was filled with Zyran nobles, council members, and visiting ambassadors. Sarilith and Ethan stood at the forefront, ready to present the results of their months of collaboration. The room was hushed, the weight of expectation palpable. Sarilith took a deep breath and began. Today, we show what can be achieved when curiosity, respect, and collaboration guide our actions. We are demonstrating a communication relay capable of connecting worlds across the galaxy. It is a product of tradition and innovation, of Zyran knowledge and human perspective combined. Ethan stepped forward, offering a concise explanation from a human point of view, highlighting practical applications and efficiency improvements. The audience listened, some skeptically, some intrigued. The demonstration began. Streams of energy flowed across the devices, transmitting messages instantaneously to the distant Arves delegation. The system worked flawlessly, showcasing the harmony between Zyran and human contributions. The audience gasped in awe as holographic projections appeared, showing real-time communications between planets light years apart. As the final message was received, Sarilith glanced at Ethan. He smiled, and she felt a surge of pride. They had done it. Their work had succeeded not only in technical terms, but also in proving a larger point. Cooperation, understanding, and curiosity could achieve what isolation and rigidity could not. Applause echoed through the hall. Some council members clapped hesitantly, others with genuine admiration. Whispers of approval spread among the nobles, and even the most skeptical advisors found themselves nodding. It was clear that the demonstration had shifted opinions. The court could no longer dismiss the value of Sarilith's vision or Ethan's human perspective. After the demonstration, Sarilith and Ethan were approached by a group of young courtiers, eager to ask questions and learn more about their methods. The princess smiled, welcoming their curiosity. "Innovation and understanding do not belong to one species," she said. "They belong to anyone willing to observe, learn, and share knowledge. You are all capable of contributing to the future, no matter your rank or origin." The words were simple but powerful. The young nobles felt inspired, realizing that tradition and progress could coexist, and that collaboration across worlds was not only possible but essential. Even the older council members began to acknowledge the wisdom in Sarilith's approach. While some remained cautious, they could not deny the results. Ethan's human ingenuity complemented Zyran tradition, creating outcomes that surpassed expectations. The court's hostility had softened, replaced by a mixture of respect and cautious curiosity. In the weeks that followed, Sarilith and Ethan continued their work, expanding their projects to include environmental stabilization, trade efficiency, and educational programs that encouraged interspecies learning. Their successes became more public, and the people of Luminara began to see the benefits firsthand. Zyrans marveled at the improvements in city life, from smoother energy distribution to more interactive learning spaces for young nobles and visiting species. One evening, after a particularly productive day, Sarilith invited Ethan to the palace observatory. The stars stretched endlessly above, their light reflecting in the polished crystal floors. Sarilith took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of relief and hope. "The court is changing," she said softly. "They are beginning to understand that progress and tradition do not have to conflict, and we have shown that cooperation can lead to extraordinary results." Ethan nodded, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "I never imagined I would find a world like this, or someone like you. You make change possible in ways I could not have anticipated." Sarilith smiled. "And you remind me that even the most advanced civilization has much to learn from others. Humans have ideas that are fresh, intuitive, and sometimes surprisingly simple. You teach me that there is value in looking at problems differently." They stood together in silence for a moment, watching as a distant comet traced a luminous path across the sky. The galaxy was vast, full of mysteries and possibilities, yet they had proven that understanding and collaboration could bridge even the widest gaps. Days later, a more personal moment arrived. Sarilith invited Ethan to the Energy Garden, their favorite sanctuary. The soft glow of bioluminescent plants and the gentle hum of energy created a tranquil atmosphere. Sarilith turned to him, her expression serious but warm. "Ethan, we have achieved much together," she said. "The court sees the value of our work and the people are beginning to understand. But there is another truth I must share, a truth about my feelings." Ethan's eyes widened slightly, his heart quickening. He had sensed a deeper connection between them, but hearing it from her filled him with quiet joy. "I care for you," Sarilith continued. "Not just as a colleague, not just as a friend, but as someone who is part of my life in a way that is important, essential even. And I see that you care as well." Ethan reached for her hand, feeling a warmth that seemed to shine brighter than the garden's lights. "I do care, Sarilith, more than I expected, more than I can describe. You have shown me a world of wonder, curiosity, and courage that I never knew existed, and you have become part of my heart." They stood together, hands intertwined, understanding that their connection went beyond work or friendship. It was a bond built on respect, shared experiences, and mutual admiration. It was the kind of bond that could withstand challenges, prejudice, and uncertainty. The final test came not from machinery or diplomacy, but from public acknowledgement. The council, witnessing the growth of the people's admiration and the undeniable successes of Sarilith and Ethan, requested a formal declaration of collaboration and mutual respect. Sarilith agreed, addressing the council and the citizens of Luminara. "Today, we celebrate not just achievement but understanding," she said. "We celebrate the willingness to learn from one another, to respect differences, and to work together for the greater good. Ethan is not merely a visitor from another world. He is a partner, a collaborator, and a friend. Together, we have shown that progress is possible when curiosity and cooperation guide our actions." The hall erupted in applause. Even the most reserved council members could not withhold their admiration. The people of Luminara felt inspired, realizing that the future could be shaped not by fear of the unknown, but by embracing it with intelligence, creativity, and open hearts. In the following weeks, the city flourished. Educational programs encouraged interspecies exchange. Young Xyrans learned human methods of problem-solving, while visiting humans discovered Xyran traditions and innovations. The energy networks became more efficient, trade routes more harmonious, and the city itself more vibrant. Sarilith and Ethan's partnership became a model, demonstrating the value of collaboration, empathy, and trust. Through it all, their bond remained at the center. They continued exploring the galaxy's wonders, discussing ideas late into the night, and finding joy in the simplest moments. A shared meal, a quiet conversation, or watching the stars shimmer across the Luminara sky. They had proven that even in the face of tradition, fear, and prejudice, understanding and cooperation could prevail. One evening, as the city glowed below them and distant stars sparkled above, Sarilith turned to Ethan. "We have achieved much, but this is only the beginning. There is so much more to learn, so many more worlds to explore, and so many more minds to connect." Ethan smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "Then let's continue, together." The stars seemed to respond, twinkling brighter, as if celebrating their commitment, their achievements, and the promise of a future built on respect, curiosity, and shared purpose. The court's hostility had faded, replaced by understanding, and the galaxy itself seemed full of endless possibilities. And so, Princess Sarilith and Ethan, the human ambassador, continued their journey. They faced the future not as separate beings from different worlds, but as partners, friends, and pioneers of a new era. They had proven that intelligence, empathy, and courage could overcome fear and prejudice, and that collaboration could achieve what tradition alone never could. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, a canvas of wonders waiting to be explored. And together, they would explore it all, guided by curiosity, respect, and the unbreakable bond they had forged. In the end, it was not just a story of friendship or discovery. It was a story of hope, hope that even the smallest spark of understanding could light the way to a brighter, shared future. The alien princess fell for a human, and the court turned hostile.